Welcome back, beautiful souls. This is sadhana for another day of sorting through decks. And the purpose of this is to reorganize my library and just to do some more reflections of what I am and am not working with. And all of the decks you are looking at today are self-published decks, also known as indie decks. And the group that I have for you on the table right now are all Waite Smith inspired, some of them more closely than others. And the one in hand is one of Conrad Steyn's decks. And I believe this is the only Smith Waite, what I would consider a clone, in my library. And the reason that I picked up this one was the crackled backs. There was something about the way that the backgrounds of these cards had been changed that I found very appealing. And yet, I'm sure some of you have seen some of my Smith-Waite videos or WS videos, and I did a lot of them earlier in the year. I certainly have come to find my favorites, and this is one that I do not pull out very often, but I really do love these backgrounds. And all of the decks that I'm sharing with you today, I will put links for in the description box below. You're looking at the Nine of Pentacles in all of these decks here, and I've chosen a few cards to compare and contrast across these decks. Right now, at the time of this recording, I'm contemplating selecting a deck for my tarot card of the year readings. And I think this is a really good exercise, and you'll see that some of the cards I have are really important to 2026, which is a 10-year, a year of change. This is a favorite deck by Lexa Luna Studios. It's the Future Ancestor Tarot. I do love its limited color palette, and I know you've heard me say that before. A lot of the names are changed in this deck, so you'll see that the kings are makers, the swords are needles, the pentacles are seeds. And there's something here about this particular Nine of Seeds that really reflects an appreciation of the abundance, the appreciation of all that I have around me. And I know that's one of the questions that we really look at in this card. Sometimes there can definitely be an overwhelm in the fullness, in the ripeness of this setting. But this one, I really feel that there is a sincere appreciation for the fulfillment of all that I am working with at this time. This is the Solara Occulta Meliora Tarot. I used this last year for my Tarot Card of the Year readings, and it proved to be an amazing reader. There are a lot of funky creatures in this deck, and yet there's something about the way that they all move and work together. There are some quite older esoteric meanings that are hidden, I would say, in some of these cards. And so you'll feel that it ventures away from the Smith-Waite quite a bit. And yet it is at the same time very familiar. And again, a beautiful deck with a limited color palette. And this is one I really do enjoy reading with. It is a bit large for shuffling, but because it is such a good reader and the colors and the connections among the figures in the cards works so well that I can get past the large size of the cards. This one is the self-published version of the Anna K Tarot, and I had passed this on many years ago, and something came up and I was really missing this deck, and I decided to purchase the self-published version. I like it much better, love the size of the cards, and I am so glad that this deck is back here for me. There is something about the way that Anna depicts these cards, and the few that I was really missing. I'm so glad to have this back here. And this is a smaller deck, so it is lovely for overhand shuffling. It has a very, I don't know if I would say quaintness, but there's a real beauty in these cards. I do love the aces and the pages. This judgment card is just stunning. I guess I can say, unfortunately, the Anna K. Lenormand, the artwork spills over the borders, but that's not the case in this one. This is the Superlunaris Tarot. It is a deck that I purchased for one card, really, the Hierophant card, and I will show you that. I rarely pull out this deck. I feel it's a little bit disjointed, and unlike the Solara Occulta, where everything kind of fits together, the characters, the people feel like they're from the same land, I just feel that this one is really kind of all over the place in background, location, the types of people. I don't know. I find this one quite hard to work with. Yet, saying that, there are some really lovely cards here. And the collage work is okay in this deck, and there are a few stunning cards. I'll show you the one that I really like. There we go. This is the Hierophant card. I just felt like I have been here. I've seen scenes very similar to this. It just was a connection that I wanted to have. The Slow Tarot is also a deck that I have an interesting relationship with. Sometimes I need to be reading with it, and other times I just want to throw it back on the shelf. This is a stunning Chariot card. This deck is a little bit like a Where's Waldo book. There is a lot to find in the cards, and I have had some lengthy conversations with the creator of this deck, and I kind of feel like she's not willing to reveal all of her secrets. At one point, I know she said there was possibly another book that was going to come out. And yet, in a way, it's kind of more fun just to spend time with cards, even do research, go down rabbit holes, trying to figure out why the creator chose what she chose for a particular card. I've answered at length lots of questions and shared my musings on some of the more unusual cards in the comments below the video or videos that I have done on this deck. The aces are borderless, which is kind of a unique feature of this deck. And there are some interesting connections in the backgrounds, like this burning house. You feel like you've seen some of these scenes before. There are a few name changes. And at one point, I considered passing this on. This is the first edition. I don't know if there were any changes in later printings. There is one card here that I absolutely, well, there's a couple. The Four of Wands is a stunning card. Pages are great. Coins, I just have a hard time with. There's one of the pages. And the Star. I find this Star card is so rich, and there's so much to work with here. Absolutely love it. This is the Star Seeker Tarot. And at one time, I was purchasing quite a few decks for edging the aesthetics of the cards. This one has a rose petal finish, which makes it kind of difficult to shuffle, though that it is quite well used, so it doesn't stick together anymore. I liked the purpleness of this deck. It felt that it brought in a spiritual quality to the cards. It made it kind of a high frequency. There's your wheel and your judgment. These are some of the cards that I have been considering and reflecting upon in choosing my deck for the tarot card of the year readings 2026. Looking at the cards that are importantly connected to 10, to change. This is one of my favorite Four of Swords. I mentioned in the mass market version of this video that I did not too long ago that I don't have many contemporary decks that show people and places closer to this era. This is one, and I find this is a wonderful deck in that you get away from the details because it is sepia tones, more black and white actually, with a little bit of color. Robin has done this so well. It's a great deck for beginners as well because it's color coded. You could compare this in a way to the Ehrenberg Tarot in the way that it gets really close up to a very specific item in the or symbol in the card. Emerging from Darkness has a wonderful guidebook, and it focuses on moving through challenges. And it's very well written. It has great journal prompts and exercises to go with your readings. And it's certainly one that I would recommend if you're looking for one that isn't so specific that it becomes difficult to get away from what is pictured in the card. And I often use memory of a real estate picture on a card, and it just makes me think that it's really hard to speak about anything other than acquisitions or things related to real estate. Great devil card. This is a first edition of the Numinous Tarot. It has gold edges and it's very well shuffled and chipped. I really like this deck. I like the suit changes. The suit of tomes, the suit of pentacles, closely related to a thread that binds. I think that's the title of it. The lovely oracle deck that by the same creator. This is you've also probably glanced the King of Swords in a lot of the decks that I've shown you, and this is the Mystic of Bells. The suit of bells, also very well done, and it really speaks to the energy of sound, the important energy of sound in terms of the element of air, instead of looking at swords. This is a queer deck. It is very inclusive in so many regards. The major arcana name changes also are really easy to work with. And it's not very often I work with such a brightly colored deck. Yet sometimes, one does need a splash of color. And usually when I pull this deck out, it is intentionally chosen for the suit of bells. There's something about that I really quite enjoy working with. And this is the Numinous Tarot by Cedar McLeod. This is I Am the Artist Tarot by Monica Cleo Saki. It is the next version of the Saki Saki Tarot. So this one, the heads are attached. And very interesting story in the guidebook describing the journey of the creator from the Saki Saki Tarot to this tarot. This deck is meant to be a muse. It's meant to inspire one's creativity, and the guidebook in that regard is also excellent. This is another card that I'm looking at closely in choosing my 2026 Tarot Card of the Year readings deck. I love to sit with this change card. I'm going to put a bunch of them on the table later today when I'm making my final decision for what deck I'm going to use. I love that she used Angel here. This is a much older title for the 20th Arcanum. And again, this is a little out of my comfort zone in that it's not really my art style. It's very bright in color. And yet there is something I just find really intriguing. I love that she included the Decan planetary zodiacal associations on the card. I Am the Artist Tarot. And it kind of goes between bright and pastels. You kind of get a bit of both in this deck. And it's funny, I say I prefer a limited color palette. I have a lot of limited color palette decks, such as Solara, Occulto, and Future Ancestor. And yet, when I do something like this, I realize how many bright and brilliant colored decks I have as well, too. This is the Playful Heart Tarot by Kitten Chops. And it is lovely cardstock. This is a great deck for shuffling. It's not a go-to deck for me, and yet there are times when I feel like I need a happy deck. And this is one that reminds me that tomorrow will be brighter, that this too shall pass. This deck is not without its challenging cards. There are, you can see, there's quite a bit of gray color. There are some rather unusual depictions of some cards. And so it does have a lovely blend of light and shadow. And yet, overall, it feels tremendously happy and kind of makes me smile. This is Tarot of the Holy Spectrum, and it is one that is very new to my library. I considered a couple of times purchasing it, didn't, because I didn't, what did I really need another Smith-Waite inspired deck for? I had a lot. And yet, I don't know, there was a few cards that really got me thinking, and I quite like this World card. In a way, I feel like this deck has a bit of certainly has a new age vibe to it. It has a bit of an apocalyptic vibe to it. It really gets me thinking, and there have been some potent readings. I mean, this is such an unusual Four of Swords. I feel like this woman here is dancing out into the light, into a dream. I quite like some of the unusual interpretations that are going on here. And I'm at this point in my tarot career where I like tradition, love working with a Tarot de Marseille, love working with heavily esoteric decks, and yet I'm always open to be challenged with another layer, another interpretation of any given card. This is the Five of Cups. It's kind of a creative deck. And then there's Anatolian. I love this deck. This is the Tarot of Echoes, probably as much or more than Tarot of the Abyss. Have a lot of Anatolian decks. The thing about her art that I find so easy to work with is the flow of energy. Things are never static. Everything moves. This is a great Wheel of Fortune. You can kind of see the darkness on one side, the active energy on the other. The figures almost look like runes. And I have found in her decks so many layers that she never speaks of. And I don't know, I connect to these decks at a pretty deep level. Now, this one kind of reminds me of what's going on in the suit of the Court cards in the Suit of Pentacles and Tarot of the Abyss. Almost like this is a carryover from that deck. This is an outstanding card. I'm not going to take the time to speak to it today, but I was quite surprised to find a great many decanic astrological references in Tarot of Echoes. There's some cards that have warmed my heart. Love this Queen of Pentacles. Really great interpretation of the Ten of Swords. The Empress and the Emperor are amazing. Four of Swords. I have really used this deck a lot. And the last one in this group is the Linescape Tarot. This is the Evolution Gold Edition. I was very intrigued with this deck and how the gold lines are so cleverly, subtly used on top of these beautiful paintings. I see a lot of familiar cards. There's a card very much like this in the Spacious Tarot. And yet, in its own way, it's a very, very unique deck. There's a softness to it. There's an openness of heart. This deck gives me hope. And there's an interesting blend of landscape in the city, landscape in nature. The seasons are all included. And I believe there are extra seasonal cards. I must pull this one out soon and do some readings with it. You know, I was looking at this card as I was preparing for this video thinking, well, why is Saturn there? You know, it makes sense that Mars is there. Mars is the ruler of Aries. But then I'm thinking, okay, well, Saturn is also the father. And so we have that quality of the Emperor as well. And I don't think I have sat down with this deck and kind of dissected the decanic symbology to see how much of it is there. And whether or not a deck creator has intended that in the creation of a deck, I find that sometimes you can find all kinds of associations. They just kind of appear because the tarot is, after all, a beautiful mandala to guide us through our challenges, our journey. This next group of decks I would put into a category of pip decks, or at least a significant number of pip cards in the deck. I find that many people have a harder time reading these cards, but on the contrary, I find that there is so much spaciousness in these cards that I am given far more room for interpretation, and I love working with this kind of deck. And you'll see some of them are more pippish than others, and I'll go through these one at a time. Probably the first pip deck that I had was the Lumina Tarot by Lauren Aletta, and this is the indie version of the deck. I know it is available mass market now. And the thing about this deck is that it is the pip cards that make the deck, and it's the humans that I find really take away from the deck's quality. I think that she did a really good job with the pip cards. And then when humans are introduced, it does something that I find a little bit off-putting. I love this Six of Swords. Some of the majors as well too. There's a lot that's going on. You will see planetary symbols, lots of energy. There are mandalas, sacred geometry. It's really, really beautiful. I don't think you can even compare the moon card to the sun card in terms of its quality. I don't know. I really love the pip cards in this deck, and I will pull out this deck for working with these cards. And it's funny, these decks, they are certainly nowhere connected to a Tarot of Marseille, and what I mean by that is that the arrangement of the pips is inconsistent across all of these decks for the most part, so that there is no rhyme or reason why the creators put the pentacles or swords or cups in a particular configuration. However, if you take time to sit with, here's a Nine of Pentacles, the card, reflect on, all right, why did the creator choose darkness? What's happening in the card? What is the significance of the sacred geometry in the background? Let's have a look at the relationship among the roots and the flowers. Do the particular flowers mean anything? I find in general the knights are quite intriguing in this deck. There's your Ace of Wands, Two of Wands. The Three of Wands is quite good as well too. So yeah, this is the Lumina Tarot by Lauren Aletta. Some people might find that the Lili White and Lili Black tarot are similar to the Lumina Tarot. And I know that the Lumina Tarot has also been compared to the Wild Unknown Tarot. And it's a great exercise to sit down with these decks and compare and contrast the creator's choices for the pip cards, as well as the majors. So here is a very energetic, changing energy in this plant. Two of Pentacles, Seven of Swords. The eagle is moving towards the moon, lunar decan, and leaving behind one sword, not two. Lunar reflection. Gorgeous wheel card. In the suit of swords, we have incense as well as swords. And of course, the colors, the shapes are going to help inform the meaning. The cups in this deck is just, they're so beautiful. I have the Lili Black tarot as well. It is not an identical deck. I believe that they were drawn independently. Perhaps a stencil tracing was done of one, but the cards are so very different and they have a different mood, and different things are revealed in the black version compared to the white version. And they both have outstanding cards, different cards, because different things shine through in the black version compared to the white version. And this is another deck that shines for its pip cards. So much is implied through the arrangement, the movement. Another deck I've had for ages is the Sasuraibito Tarot. And as soon as I saw the name and realized it was Japanese or had some connection to Japanese language, I hopped on this deck. This is a really old version of the deck. I know that it comes in a much nicer format now, but I have this chipped gold gilding, shiny cardstock, older version. Here is the Two of Pentacles, Seven of Swords, Moon. So yes, lots of people in this deck, but also lots of cards that I would put into the category of pip cards, because there are certainly fewer people in this deck and more shapes and backgrounds to work with. No humans in the Five of Wands. The humans in this deck are lovely. King of Cups, Queen of Cups. And there are people in some of the minor arcana as well. But I put this one here because it feels like more of a pip deck. If you compare this to the Smith-Waite Tarot, where the Three of Swords and the Eight of Wands really are the only minor arcana cards without humans in them, this one certainly has way more than that. I know this is another favorite deck. This is the Wayhome Tarot by Bakara Wintner. Lots of pip cards in this deck as well, and the arrangements are very well done. There is a great guidebook that goes with this deck explaining the creator's journey with tarot, and it is hilarious. Definitely worthwhile reading for the court cards. Anyway, it's called WTF is Tarot. It does not come with the deck. I think this is a great Six of Swords, showing the independence of each of the plants, each growing and forming in their own way. And for me, that is the beauty of pip cards, is there is less that's going on, and we can begin to tell story and find connections among symbols that it's so much more complicated when the pictures on the cards are just chock-a-block with people and things going on. Court cards are great in this deck. Yeah, so this is the Wayhome Tarot by Bakara Wintner. This very colorful deck you see here is one that came to me through the Alleyman Tarot, perhaps, which I'll show you next. And I fell in love with the Four of Pentacles, which is in that deck. And so I sought out the Neon Tarot and purchased it. And I love working with this deck. I find it is exhilarating. The colors are fantastic. And I quite like the depictions and the way that the objects, the symbols of each suit, are arranged in this explosion of color. Yet there are so many subtle things you can work with, looking at, as with any pip deck, the way that the coins are arranged. The coins are within a vessel. What is that speaking to? It's really a fun deck to read. And if you're interested in Chinese characters, you can go down that rabbit hole, exploring titles, messages on the cards as well, though that's not really necessary. There is quite a good little white book that goes with this deck. This is the Eight of Cups. Isn't it gorgeous? This is the Neon Tarot by Katya Kurtoka, and you can still find it. Again, I will link all of these decks below in the description box. This is the Magical Nature Tarot by the Sync Spirit Collective. Very new deck to my library. Have not worked with it a lot, but I love the collage work. I could have put this one in the collage section, but I put it here just so that you are aware of its pippish nature. There are animals, there are humans, but the human aspect of it is quite sparse. Apprentice of Swords, Apprentice of Pentacles, Nine of Pentacles. So you can see there's a close-in effect, like a couple of the decks that I've shown you. And you really kind of need to look at the collage work to take a moment to figure out what is going on. Six of Wands, Three of Cups. I love the soft color palette, kind of the mulberry color, earth tones. Lovely Fool card. I'm looking forward to spending some more time with this one in the new year. It's going to go on my rack. Magical Nature Tarot. It is amazing that I still have this deck. I have a love-hate relationship with this card stock. However, there are too many lovely cards in this deck to do away with it. I'm sure you know this is the Textured Tarot. Just some really beautiful collage artwork. It is a very pippish deck, and that's why it's in this section, not the collage deck section, which will be upcoming. Beautiful Four of Swords. So there are humans in this deck for sure, but there are certainly a greater number of pip cards than you would find in many Waite-Smith inspired decks. And some of the collage is very textured and fabric-y, and other times it really is a mixed media collage. Some of the cards are very full, others are very simple. Three of Wands, Eight of Wands. And it's what I said at the beginning, it's the cardboardy cardstock. I love to riffle shuffle, and this is definitely an overhand shuffling deck. Seven of Cups. So yeah, there are a great number of humans, but more pip cards than you would expect in a Waite-Smith inspired deck. This is the Two of coins, 2 of rings in the Marigold tarot. This is a stunning tarot deck with amazing cardstock. 2 of wands. There is a great guidebook that goes with this deck to help you understand the background of the culture of this deck. Moon, Mighty King of Swords. The power, or one of the powers of this deck, is in its color palette. The gold, or the bronze, and the black and white. In some of these cards, I am seeing Yonasa, and that sounds very bizarre because these decks are certainly not related. This is one I haven't had out in ages, and I'm just smiling here. I want to do a reading right now with this deck. This is a Canadian creator. I'm not sure if I have done a video with Canadian decks. There might be too many that I have for that, but it's beautiful. Really high quality deck. And the last one in this group you have seen many a time on my channel. I read with it always. It is on my acrylic rack. This is Pagan Otherworlds. It's a fantastic reader, and I find that the pippishness of this deck is really easy to work with. Here's your 7 of Swords. There's a lot that's going on in the picture. If you look at what is included in the landscape in the background, the court cards, the people in this deck are so amazing. The costuming is outstanding. In that way, it reminds me of the labor-intensive costuming that happens in Bubba Studios decks. This is not a deck that I appreciated until I had it in hand. I love shuffling this deck, getting lost in this world that is Pagan Otherworlds. It's not a Celtic deck. It's not a Druid deck. It's not really of any particular time or place. You might put it somewhere in Norse mythology. I don't know. I just kind of let it be its own thing. It's really strong and clear. It asks good questions when your question isn't quite clear enough, and always finds a way to deliver a message that you need to hear. Pagan Otherworlds by Usi. Oh, there's one more on the table. I don't think I've shared this one. This is Vindur Tarot. Beautiful yellow edges. Lovely cardstock. A little bit thicker. This is a very minimalist deck. Lots of white space. Reminds me a little bit of Naked Heart in that way. And some really clever depictions of cards. This Knight of Swords is so clever and equally hilarious. You only see the foot leaving the picture. Hierophant is replaced by Chiron. Seems very clever to me. I would say that this is a queer deck as well. When you see the humans, it has that sort of a feel to it. I find this is a really good deck to read when you have someone who's new to the tarot. Kind of takes away the expectations of what a tarot deck is supposed to look like. This one reminds me of another deck. I often have this one out for reading. I really like working with it. Vindur Tarot by Leah Pantea. This was a wonderful project called the Alleyman Tarot by 7 Day and Asmund. And it was so much fun to go through these cards, this ginormous selection of cards, and choose 78 to be my tarot deck. There are, I'm going to say, 200, maybe 225 cards that came in this box. And just let me show you, I have done a couple videos on this deck. I sorted the extra cards, so I have markers in here for extra majors, cups, wands, And I think I did a little section here where I have even created a Lenormand deck. So there is a lot of cards that come with this set. And one of the best parts of this project was to get to know a whole bunch of decks that I had never seen or never taken the time to get to know. There are a few cards in this project, let's call it that, that are not actually tarot cards. They were created from other art for this series. You can see this is from the Marigold Tarot. I've already showed you that one, and there are other very familiar cards. I believe there are 2 Waite-Smith cards in this deck. There's a few Tarot de Marseille from various iterations of the deck. Here is the Playful Heart Tarot, and this is one I'm going to show you in a little bit. This is the Architect Tarot. I did mark up these cards because there are so many cards. I wanted a reference point for the guidebook, and I'll show you that in a moment. And I didn't want to put it on the back. It was really hard actually to mark up the cards, but I did. And that's what these numbers are in reference to. It's guidebook pages. This is from the Literary Tarot, which I have. Also will show you a little bit later. I showed you the Vindur already. And there were several decks that I purchased because of this project. And here's the one that I mentioned from the Neon Tarot. And I have sought after a few other decks in this series project, but haven't been able to find them. Some of them are out of print, no longer available. This was really interesting. I did purchase this deck after. I really like this card. This, however, is not one of the cards in the corresponding deck. It was blown up. It's made a little bit differently. I do have this deck I showed you in the Mass Market series. So yeah, it's really, really fun. I have done readings with it, and it's so interesting how that comes together when you are reading 78 cards from 78 different decks, different eras, different times, different systems. And it's, I don't know, it's fun. It's just really fun. And on the back, of course, we have 78 different backs. And this must have taken forever to resize all of the cards so that they fit together and they are all the same size. Now, they're not all the same texture. Some of them do have metallic edges, but they're all pretty much the same cardstock. And I'm just was so impressed with this whole thing. And I know that I think we gathered a couple of times, different people on TarotTube, when we talked about the Alleyman Tarot. What Alleyman did with the guidebook is also really well done. And this is often rewritten. And it's a lot of a unique presentation from the creator themselves. There's always information here about where the source of the art came from, or sometimes how the particular card came to be in the deck. So really happy to have this one. I have already shown you several collage decks, and these few I put together because they are all collage art of one sort or another, and I chose to put the Emperor card on top, so we'll start with that. Let's begin with Dust II Onyx. I have 2 versions of this deck. I have the smaller size, the travel version, as well as the gorgeous larger cards. Rose petal finish, bronze matte edges, gold matte edges. Very inspired project as well. This collage art is textured, it's multimedia. There are historical references, current pop culture references, There are different eyes peering through the faces of familiar figures. Here's a two of coins here. My favorite part of this deck, which I have mentioned many times, is the court cards. They do something really special for me. We looked at this in lots of different decks. This is the 9 of coins. And in the water suit, and now I don't know if you can see, but the water is kind of textured and you can feel it above the paper. This is the suit of gourds. So brilliantly, brilliantly done. There's another one. In the suit of swords, I believe here's one of the court cards, Mama Coin, Papa Staff. And I don't know if you can see, but there is the face of a contemporary figure through that face. What I wanted to show you was that in the suit of blades, like the water, it's almost like we can see blood, the blood that the swords, that the blades have created through their actions. This is such a dynamic deck. Why I have both versions of the deck was simply an ordering nightmare. I did not intend to end up with both of them. But this is much easier to shuffle. The cards are smaller. And surprisingly, you can still read the gold embossed titles very well. Not much is lost in the smaller cards. There's just as much feeling and brilliance in the small cards as there are in the larger ones. This is Dust to Onyx by Courtney Alexander. The Ritual Tarot. This is a beautiful collage deck, and I would put this one right up there with the Voyager. I think both of these collage decks are very impactful in the tarot world, and I am in 2025 going to sit down with a few of these deeper collage decks, probably Ritual and Voyager and maybe one other, and do a deep dive. I'm so interested in the pieces of art that have been used in these collages, and I think it's going to be quite something to compare and study together, particularly the Voyager with the Ritual. I think this is a brilliant, brilliant deck, and I love the choices that Tierra May has made in putting together this deck. This is the Tiger Tarot. It is a deck that I purchased simply for its eccentricity. I saw it on Garden Goddess, Thea's channel, and was so intrigued with the bizarreness of what was going on here. It is a riot of color. I believe there are 6 court cards for every suit. There might even be an extra suit in this deck. It's one that I don't think I could ever really get to the bottom of, but certainly might pull out some of the cards when I decide to do a study of collage art and really think about, some of them are like, this is much easier to look at than some of the other ones that are just full. Here's an interior landscape, which is it's not as common in this deck. There's a lot of what feels like garden, outside scenes and settings, lots of different flowers. This is the Tiger Tarot. This is a deck that you may not expect to see in the collage art section. This is Tarot of the Holy Light. It probably should be in a esoteric section. Here's your Emperor card. But I am intrigued by the making of this deck, the way that it has been put together. And some of the cards feel more of a collage than others. The guidebook that goes with this deck, purchased separately, is a wonderful reference unto itself. I have not read and worked with this deck other than to do card comparisons. It does not follow Golden Dawn's system, and yet in the introduction it teaches so thoroughly different times and different ways of or evolutions of the tree of life. And there is a lot, if you're interested in the esoterics of tarot, there is a lot to be learned from this deck. Here's King of Cups. The guidebook is just outstanding. And you certainly can do card comparisons and single card draws with other similar energy decks and do a deep study. You could put this with some of the Crowley based decks and really expand your understanding of what is going on. So King of Cups here is in Scorpio, so that is a common correspondence. And not all of the correspondences are different. And here we have Five of Cups in the second decan of Scorpio, so that's a little bit different. But this is probably like the Hermetic Tarot, one that is most definitely a study deck for me. If you caught it, this one was in the Alleyman as well. This is one I've had for a long time. It came out in a variety of colors. I chose the lavender one. Probably the green one in hindsight, I think is most suitable for the color on the fronts of the cards. Probably can't see in this light, but there's a green hue to these cards. This is a very clever deck. It does have upright and reversed keywords on the cards. The collages are quite complex, and it is one that takes a bit of time to figure out. This is the 5-cent tarot. When I first got this deck, I did a lot of readings with it and found it to be very, very insightful. I would put this in the pile of swords decks. There's something about the words that are really clever. And there is an oracle deck, the 2 penny oracle, I believe, and it's really fun to work with these two decks together. Matches for the suit of wands, cups, needles, and coins, I believe. No, buttons. That's right, buttons. This is the Stretch Tarot by Joseph Stretch. At one time, it was only available from the creator. I think now it is available on Make Playing Cards. It reminds me a little bit of the work of Marie Bento, who put together a series of oracle and tarot decks. Really brilliant work, excellent guidebooks. I'm sorry, I don't have one to show you anymore. But these collages are really interesting. This is a deck you could use with past life readings, diving into ancestral connections. And I know that Joseph is quite open to answering questions about the source of some of the collage pages. He said to me that he doesn't have a lot of the original artwork, but I found him quite chatty when I reached out to him. And I love doing that. I love reaching out to creators and building connections and asking questions about cards. The Stretch Tarot by Joseph Stretch. Curated art decks. I showed you a few in the previous video, and these three are ones that I reach for quite often. The far left is another deck by Robin Cole. This is the beautiful Rebellion Tarot. The story of the creation of this deck is really something she wanted to create. They wanted to create a Waterhouse deck, and because that wouldn't work, Robin put together paintings from a similar time, similar feeling, and I believe she called this the Raphaelite tarot for a long time until it all came together. And this is another deck that is a surprisingly amazing reader. I love her choice of the artwork in this deck. There's a few cards that are favorites, and I have spent a lot of time reading the PDF guidebook, which I have bound, that goes with the deck. And for many of the cards, this is one of them. So this is a landscape painting. In the guidebook, you see the full landscape painting, so you can see the portion of the art that Robin chose for the card. And some of this art will be very familiar. I believe this painting might even be in Joseph Stretch's deck. I know it's in the Oracle of Delphi. But for the most part, these paintings I haven't seen in other decks before. And the guidebook is really something. This is a painting of Morgan Le Fay. I love looking at this art. In the center, Odilon Redon. So this is the deck that is one artist. And it includes his noir paintings as well as most that are more brightly colored. And the collage of pasting the wands and swords on the cards is very well done. It's very subtle. This is the first edition of the Lonely Dreamer Tarot by Melissa Wotherspoon. And I am so glad that I still have this deck. I almost passed it on as a fundraiser, but very, very happy that I still have it. I find this is a deep reader. It's a lovely deck that will respond to heartbreak, deep heart, emotion, transitions. What a beautiful card to choose for 9 of Cups. Each of the versions of this deck are a little bit different. Some of the paintings were switched around, and there's extra cards, different extra cards that come with first, second, third editions. Yeah, Lonely Dreamer Tarot. And on the far right is a compilation of contemporary art from the Wee Moon journals. And you will undoubtedly know many of these paintings as well, because some of them have come from tarot decks. And I know many of you, like myself, use the Wee Moon journal for planetary references, moon phases, small daily notes. This is a really interesting deck, having both horizontal and vertical cards, switching up the court cards, the titles for them. The keywords sometimes really get you thinking. There is a little guidebook which is excellent and pretty much clears up any confusion you may have in the direction that any given card is going. And the astrology is a little different. It's not Golden Dawn based, but there is an astrology layer as well to these cards. And this is a deck that I can pick up and read with at any time. It feels like it hits a spot of, again, something that's needed in the heart space. You recognize this one? I believe this is in the Dark Goddess Tarot, Ellen Lorenzi prints. And this is the Wee Moon Tarot by the Wee Moon Collective. This is a group of decks that is quite close to my heart. I have spent quite a bit of time examining the art of Lady Frida Harris and doing comparisons between the Crowley Thoth deck and several of these. Many of you have seen, I did an extended series with Tarot Avatara on my channel. This is a Frida deck in every sense of the word. Frida Kahlo meets Lady Frida Harris. They were both painting at the same time. And this is such a potent deck of healing. I chose the Hermit cards just to lay on the table here. I'm sure you picked up on that. I cried. I have. So the biography by Herrera was an invaluable resource as well in studying this deck and really taking my time to have a good look at these paintings. This is a story of deconstructing your life in order to put it back together. It's a story of pain. It's a story of healing the sacral chakra. Not that Frida Kahlo was able to do that in her lifetime, but I think the potential of this deck is one for healing relationship, healing sacral chakra issues. It is so moving and gut-wrenching, heart-breaking, all at the same time. I don't think it's a deck for the faint of heart, but certainly if you are deep in your healing experience, it's one that you might want to reach for. This is Sarah Wheatley's Ashera Tarot. I did a side-by-side long journey with this deck and the one that's here. This is the Thoth Journey Tarot. I'll show you that one next. And really appreciated the layers, the complexities, the wanderings into the esoteric associations of the Golden Dawn that both of these decks attempt to tackle. I like both of these decks for very different reasons. They have quite a different feel to them. Sarah Wheatley is really knowledgeable, and you could use her guidebook as a resource for studying Golden Dawn correspondences. You can even see I Ching. And there's several cards as well too in the Crowley deck that include the I Ching. You can see that there are contemporary images on this one. Now this one, I would strongly recommend getting the large guidebook to go with it so that you can read the Thoth Journey, the journal. And each of these cards begins in a room and then wanders out into this imaginary place somewhere in the world where the protagonist wanders, learns a lesson that is related to the themes of the card, and then goes back to that space to integrate what she has observed. It's so well written. Through reading that book, I absorbed some different nuances to these cards, was able to apply them in different ways. And I found it intriguing how she included some of the planetary influences as well too. I really like this deck. The other decks on the table are by Mel Meline. This is the Tabula Mundi Tarot. This is the black and white version, colored version. And I use this deck just about every week. I have the major arcana and the supporting planetary cards on my altar, and I use this as a study deck, just expanding. I have the other book that goes with it, the larger book, and I find it is a great reference. I have a lot of favorite cards in this deck. I think my favorite in this one is probably Adjustment and Two of Cups. Now, I was a little bit disappointed that this deck was so small because I think my intention was to color it. However, seeing this artwork in black and white is a good way to study the colors to look at layers in a different light. And I firmly believe that when you're looking at, I have a couple other decks, I believe, where I have either a coloring book or a black and white version and then a colored deck. And you really do begin to see different things when the color is removed. So this is Tabula Mundi. And the other Melmeline deck that's on the table is the Rosetta Tarot. These are the larger cards in English. And I also have a very special Papyrus Gold edition that has the hieroglyphs and gold trim. This was Melmeline's first tarot deck. And the larger cards have more of a yellow border. And I have to say, it's a lot easier reading in English and reading the hieroglyphs, but I love the feel of the Papyrus Gold edition. And because I have followed Susie Chang, Melmeline, and read all their books and listened to their podcast many, many times, I've absorbed a lot of their teaching, been able to integrate what feels meaningful and let the rest go. And yet I feel like those are two tarologists that I will always be learning from, Susie Chang and Melmeline. And these decks are by Melmeline, not Susie, but she did a podcast with Mel, and it is just fabulous. So let's turn to some botanical decks. I have 3 that I'm going to share with you today. This one is Jessica Bott's botanical deck. It is a really interesting, large group of cards. I wouldn't say as such that I would work with this in a traditional tarot way. There is a lot of medicine to learn through our relationship with the trees, with the plants. In this deck, the major arcana are trees, the birches, empress. Jessica does a pretty good job in the guidebook explaining her choice of trees and plants. And yet, one of the reasons I would turn to a deck like this is continued medicinal exploration. So maybe I've done a reading with the Herb Crafter Tarot, which I know really well, much better than any of the next 3 decks I'm showing you here. I may want to follow up, go a little bit deeper. Perhaps there was, I don't know, maybe one of the mushroom cards came up in the Herb Crafter, and it might prompt me to go to a deck like this. The majors are trees, wands are spices, cups are flowers, swords are cacti, earth is crops. And then there's these additional 5 suits in the deck: carnivorous, herbs, medicines, and really every single plant, every single tree in this deck could be a medicine of sorts, poisons, and mushrooms. And I believe one of the intentions of the poisonous are plants to take you to your limits as well, not just exploring toxicity. And so in working with a deck such as this, I think this falls into the category of working with challenging decks. Decks that you want to provoke work that you need to do to make your way through a really challenging time. And I find that there's a kind of special energy in plant medicine decks that touches our stories in very different ways. Any of these 3 decks that I am showing you here could fill that niche. It might just be a matter of overwhelm with number of cards, unfamiliarity with plants. It might be the art style choice. So this is the Botanical deck by Jessica Bott. This is the Botanica deck by Jay Staunton. This is beautifully, beautifully colored. Slightly different feel to it, more like an oracle shape of card. And the symbols are also ones that you're going to have to get to know. There are no plant names on the cards. So at the beginning, using the guidebook is, for me, an essential reference point. And also getting to know the little symbols at the top. These are the majors. And I find that this one, having the black background, it's a little bit of darkness and mystery and nighttime. I get really curious about how, perhaps doing a 3-card reading, how the plants interact with one another. And I might look at particular seasons that plants emerge and see how that might affect a reading. Some of the cards, intuitively, you could guess what they are. Others, not so much. But I don't know, I really like this one as well too. And when I first got it, I used it a lot. And I found a great deal of wisdom in the plants. Dandelion is always so beautiful. So in this deck, we have the majors, which each of the cards has their own little symbol. You can see the dandelion on the top of the Fool card. And then this is staffs or wands, swords, cups, and pentacles. And I think in the guidebook, and the choice of plants is pretty good, and it's well explained. And I think it might also give one an opportunity to see a plant in a new way. Here's your Ace of Wands and Page, Queen. There are a few tools and implements in this deck as well too, like in the Herb Crafter Tarot. I haven't had this one out for some time, and just in setting up for this section of the video, I was remembering back to the daily readings that I did with this one, and I think it's time to bring one of my botanical decks out and make sure that I'm using them so that I don't forget the associations and all of the things that I have learned about these cards and my relationship with, isn't that pretty? 3 of Pentacles, with these plants and the plant medicine. This is the Telluric Tarot by Lunaria Gold. In these cards, you have plants on every card as well as crystals. And the relationship of the plant to the crystal, they both speak to the energy of each of the cards. There are a few extra cards in this deck. And so if I were doing strictly a tarot reading with this deck, I would likely remove the extra cards. So you can see before the Fool card, we have a card with an infinity symbol on it. So that is an extra major arcana card. And then there are extra cards in the suits as well. I'll show you that. I really love working with crystals. And this crystal plant combo idea is really appealing to me. Way back when this came out as a Kickstarter, soon after, I watched an interview with Lunaria Gold, and she really put a lot of time and effort into the authenticity of the gemology, of the geology. I'm not sure what the right word is, but the accuracy of the drawings for the gems. And I really enjoyed listening to her. Again, this is a deck I haven't had out in ages, and just holding it in hand here, it makes me kind of want to hold it tighter and sit in the nourishment of the plants and the crystals, the gemstones, the rocks. I absolutely love working with rocks. And again, one has a lot of decks I have a lot of decks in my library, and sometimes it's a little challenging to find time to work with all of them. Okay, so we have a suit of drive. So these plants and the plants and the crystals are meant to inspire fire, action, intention. And in each suit, there's a 0 card. So the 0 card is the Fool of each suit. So this one is one that, if I were doing a straight up tarot reading, likely might remove the 0 cards from the minors. And then in so we have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that's not uncommon to have the court cards numbered instead of named. Before I came on, I spent a lot of time sorting these cards. I hadn't worked with this deck for a while, and I forgot how similar in color the font is for each of the suits. And I am most definitely going to leave this out, and I'm going to put some sort of symbol on the cards so I don't have that trouble in sorting. And this just feels, I don't know which one. I'm thinking now maybe this is the one that I'm going to leave out, because it's not fun, if you have to struggle with a deck. I do have spreadsheets for a lot of challenging decks that I cannot remember the associations or the special changes in the cards. But I don't want to do that with this deck because I know my rocks, my crystals quite well. Most of these plants I am familiar with, and it's just really awkward when you sort of fumble over the intention of the suit. The guidebook, again, great description of the plants and the crystals. And yeah, it's a really pretty deck. I think it's pretty hard to find. Look at this really large hagstone here. Adderstone and clover. This is 6 of cups. I believe the keyword for this one is playful. And so once you get to know the cards, you can most certainly bring in your Waite Smith vocabulary as well. And I think she does a great job in marrying familiar tarot meanings with the intention of the plants and the crystals. These are the Sacred Bee tarot decks by Kelly Burton. The first one was Journey of the Sacred Bee. Perhaps this is my favorite. I really appreciate the esoteric symbols on this deck. I feel like I will work with this deck for a long time. Much like the Adepts of the Golden Dawn did, Kelly has created her own deck, and she's very knowledgeable in that system. And she has created some of her own keywords for the cards. I didn't pull out the ones that were changed. I've done lots of videos on these decks, so you can check out my channel for that. So for example, the Fool is called the Journey. And the sacred geometry, the respect for the journey of the bee, the reciprocity of our relationship with the bees is all a very important part of working with these decks. And so this one is, I would say, most closely Golden Dawn related. The saturated colors really evoke great feeling. And like most Golden Dawn decks, we have Princess in lieu of Page, Queen, King, and I believe she uses Prince. Many of the Golden Dawn keywords I still struggle with because over time I have learned to see wider associations with all of the tarot cards. And sometimes I find the keywords limiting, just like I might find a contemporary deck too specific and limiting. And so, not just with this deck, but decks in general that have keywords, I may just disregard the keyword and bring in the mandala of knowledge that has come to me over time. This one's quite good. The keyword is renounce. So this is Journey of the Sacred Bee. Keeper of the Sacred Bee is Smith Waite based. Purple edges. Similar color palette. and more easily recognizable if Rider-Waite-Smith is your system of choice. You can see the stained glass window in the Five of Pentacles. And what Kelly Burton adds to her tarot decks that a lot of other Waite-Smith inspired decks don't have is her knowledge. Her knowledge of the esoteric associations of the Golden Dawn. I feel like she has really honored the art of Pamela Coleman Smith and the intention of Arthur Waite as well, that this doesn't wander too far from how the Waite-Smith deck was put together. The Ten of Pentacles, you see the 10 Sephiroth, the Eight of Wands moves in the same direction, things like that. And I was not going to order this deck because I had a lot of Waite-Smith inspired decks. And I'm so glad that I picked this up. This is a deck that I have used a lot, and I find that people love the color. It's very rich. Find it's very high frequency. It invites lots of attention when it's out on the tarot table. This summer, Flight of the Butterfly was added to the series, and again, you'll see it is very similar in color palette. A few more pinks, the same green and blues, same size, beautiful quality. And this is the journey of the butterfly, or the flight of the butterfly. And it's a bit of a, can I say it's a meld of the two decks, in that we do have the planetary symbols on the bottom, the zodiacal symbols, and yet we have also familiar Waite-Smith images. So here we have the children sharing a cup on the Six of Cups. The Six of Swords is recognizable as a Six of Swords. The symbol of the butterfly, the flight of the butterfly, the journey of the butterfly, is a beautiful metaphor to work with. And I have brought this deck out when I am feeling that the querent is just on this cusp of transformation. I haven't had it that long, got it this summer, and so I feel that there's a lot yet to discover with this particular deck. This is the Philarcos Tarot by Carmen Sorrenti. I have trimmed off the borders. Also, you can find a extended deep dive to this deck on my channel. This is a journey into one's dreams. The Philarcos were wise ones who helped people process their dreams. And this goes back to the time of ancient Greece, where there were dream temples in caves along the Mediterranean. And Carmen spent a lot of time researching this history, this mythology, as well as working on her PhD in dreams. And this deck is really quite extraordinary. I do pull this out as a comfort, as a support to reflecting upon my own wanderings in dreams. And the majors are fully illustrated. I'm sure most of you know this deck. It's just simply gorgeous. This Empress card, I just love the way that the green comes down in the shape of a cup between her breasts. It's just flourishing with Venusian energy. Or the alchemical symbols and connections are so powerfully thought through. The minor arcana is really intriguing. This is a 10, so we have quite a bit of color in it. The 2s, the 3s have less color, so the color builds through the suit. Each of the aces is blindfolded in black and white. And the knights, so let me show you the knights. So these are all aces here. The knights are called trails. And there's three different resources for this deck. There is a guidebook online. There are some articles as well as the little book that comes with the deck. And if you piece together all of that information, you can learn quite a bit about this deck. And the trails, like the name implies, are meant to guide you into the suit. I've really found support in working with this deck. I think the trails are one of my favorite cards. The pages are called Dreamers, and they're beautiful. And in the minors, there's quite a dance that goes on in the cards. Sometimes the bits and pieces of each painting feel a little disjointed, and other times they kind of tell a fluid story. This is a 10 of spirals. So suit names are changed. So this is Earth. Spirals is Earth. Sparks is fire. The suit of wings for air. And the suit of coral for water. This is the Lux Prajna Tarot by Thorn Bunyawan, who is a Thai Buddhist monk. And when I saw this deck, I was so intrigued. It is very far outside the lines of a traditional tarot deck, and yet part of my journey with this deck is in really finding connections between the intention of the art and where I might find this archetype or this lesson in the tarot. Most of you know the art of kintsugi, Japanese repairing of pottery with gold paint, with gold painted glue. And here you can see that this vase has been repaired, and then the kintsugi also is painted on the body to the right. So it's really clever. I spent quite a bit of time trying to match the cards to their corresponding card in the 78 more traditional tarot, and I was able to do that for the most part. And some of them are named with familiar names, like this is the Hanged Man, Temperance is Temperance, Chariot is Chariot. The creator of this deck does have a Facebook page, and if you go back quite a ways, you can find more information about each of the cards. I find inspiration in the art as well as the vocabulary that's on these cards. This card is Worldly Vicissitudes, Survivor, Real Face. Kind of reminds me of a Osho Zen card. Bereavement, Mental Focus, No Mind, Rooting. This is the literary tarot. I did mention it when I was discussing the Alleyman tarot. I do love literature, and the idea of this deck was very intriguing. I do have the extra large glossy page book that was available for purchase. And I did that after the fact because I found some of the connections rather challenging to piece together. But like I said, the process of creating this deck, the idea of the deck, I found quite appealing. Some of the literature I am not familiar with. Most of it I am. The problem with this deck is that I don't agree with the pairings in many of the cases. I don't feel like the creators of this deck had a really good handle on what each of the tarot cards mean. So it's not a deck that I read with, and yet there's something about it that I want to continue to explore at some unknown time. This is one of the editions of the Telluric Tarot. I have a couple. I really like this deck and did a deep dive some time ago and really got into the heart of this deck, exploring the nooks and crannies of this estate. And I see this deck as a journey around a beautiful old estate. And I love the metaphor of interiors and exteriors. the enclosed garden, the wild garden. I continue to see things in the cards that I may not have seen at other times. This is a deck that you really only can use in natural light. It's hard to see some of the details if you don't have good lighting. It intrigues me. It intrigues me in that our homes represent who we are. And if we looked more closely at the things we had in our homes and how we take care of our homes and how we arrange this and that, I think we could learn a lot about ourselves. And this is a deck that really is a beautiful reflection of what all of those metaphors mean. And this is one of the cards where you can sort of imagine beyond the wall. And there's a couple of cards where you get that opportunity to sort of look outside, beyond. So if you're interested, check out my deep dive on this deck. I've mentioned a few of my deep dives in this video, and I will do my best to link them in some way for you for easy access. This is an extra card. So this is the Architect Tarot by Youssef Bouchari, and it came to me when I was exploring the Alleyman Tarot. Very intrigued with this deck. Again, we are looking at very interesting perspectives, different perspectives on this deck. I did a video on it, and the creator of the deck actually commented in appreciation. These cards, I think you need to sit with individually for some time to really understand where the creator was going with these cards. Just the details. We have a figure here, the Empress here, who is looking out over a cliff. There is the bridge, there's her crown. We have the river that we see in other cards. And I think you can read a lot into these cards, but they require, I think, a lot of sitting with. It's not something, at least to me, that emerges immediately. And so this is definitely no more than a 3-card reader. And I am surprised more often than not by the insights that the Architect Tarot reveals. I believe this is the card that was in the Alleyman Tarot. There is a bit of a sadness, a bit of a loneliness to it. It's quiet. It's definitely personal, very personal reflection. This is the Samira May Tarot. There is a larger format, better paper version that is available on Etsy. Comes in a beautiful wood box. I ordered this smaller version first to see if it was a deck that I wanted to work with. I sent a message to the creator to see if there was a more extensive PDF to help with the choice of symbols on the cards, because some of the cards I don't understand why a symbol is on the card, and maybe I just haven't sat long enough with this deck. But the art, I'm really intrigued by the art and the antique quality of the coloring. And so it's a deck I would love to understand better. And another reason I purchased it is because I do want to do a deep dive into Hebrew symbols, and so that the minors aren't as the minors just have numbers on them. There are humans on the court cards, but it's the majors that are so very, very intriguing. And I hope that I make time to come back and sit with these. And I may do some sort of a series on working with the paths on the Tree of Life. This could be a part of that if it fits into that, if the correspondences make sense. This is the Narrative Alchemy Tarot by Chrissy Bentley. I loved the idea of this tarot. choosing a word, one word for each of the cards, and placing each of the tarot cards in a chakra. And I wanted to explore this deck. And I thought perhaps that I could use it in my Tarot Through the Chakras class. However, in developing that course, I realized a thing or two about placing the tarot in the chakras and how to work with that, or a better way to work with that. You'll notice that I do not have any chakra decks. I mean, I do have a few oracles. I don't really pull them out much. I work deeply, deeply with the chakras, but I don't have one of the specifically assigned chakra decks. However, when a creator attempts to do something like this, I am intrigued. And one of the things that Chrissy said was that she's not really open to criticism. Please understand that this is my personal interpretation of the cards, and I respect that. I really do. And I think that in working with the chakras, we each develop a relationship with them depending on where we are at in our own journey, with our own healing, etc. This is the Chamonix Tarot, another one I have worked with extensively, done many videos on this deck. The creator's name is Eden Gallanter. It does do its own thing. It is most definitely not Waite Smith inspired. The journey through each of the suits tells, at least two of the suits, tells a story of the figures in the suit. And I have taken so much time with this deck that I've really come to understand what the creator's intention was. And I think there is a place for this deck. It's certainly one that you would want to work with individually outside the parameters of the tarot. The majors, for sure, you can associate those associations that you have learned with the major arcana, but the minors really do their own thing. And even in the major arcana, there is so much to learn with the bits and pieces that she has put together. You will see the characters in the court cards appear in multiple cards. So when you're working with the suit of staves, the Prince of Staves, the Princess of Staves, they will show up in various cards. And even in the major arcana, the figures, there are reoccurring figures. So it's a bit of a story to unpack. And so I have this version of the deck, which has the names on it. And then as part of my own study to really get to know the deck, I cut off the edges. And so I also have this one too that I do personal readings with. I think it was when I was discussing Tarot Avatara that I said that that was a deck that kind of took you apart before it brought you back together. And in the same way, I feel something similar in this deck, that it's about deconstructing one's issues, deconstructing one's life, and then bringing it back together. It's a really interesting deck to work with. I don't have a lot of specifically themed decks in my library, but these few I've put together for that reason. This is the Tarot of Japanese Poetry, and it is such a beautiful deck. It is a seasonal deck, and there is a poem in translation for each of the cards. I have a love of Japanese culture, particularly historical Japanese culture. And when I saw this deck, I knew that it was one that I wanted to hold and study and just spend some time with. have wandered extensively around Kyoto and some of the older districts in different places in Japan, and it just feels like a deck that brings meaning and deeper understanding of who I am and perhaps where I've wandered in other lifetimes. And I love poetry. And so even in doing single card pulls, I really enjoy just luxuriating in the language of the poem associated with any of the cards. This is the Red Seeds Tarot by Linda Hill. There's also a number of oracle decks in this theme, oversized deck. This is the journey of the seekers through the Aleutian mysteries. If you are a aficionado, follower, lover of Greek mythology, the Persephone Demeter myth, this is most definitely a deck for you. I have come to appreciate some really special nuances in this deck, and that there's a suit of bees, which is the suit of air. And I just feel the vibrations of the bees in this suit and love it when I get a reading with this suit. And, one would not normally be so happy to have swords cards in a reading, but there's something about this suit of bees that really speaks to me. I spent, during COVID, a lot of time with this deck doing weekly readings, actually more often than that, and exploring what it must have been like to partake in such a ritual as the Aleutian Mysteries. And I appreciate the work that Linda has put into this deck. Some of the cards are so easy for me to read intuitively. I feel the energy of the cards. This is the Suit of Vessels, the Seven of Vessels, and I kind of love this interpretation of getting lost in the medicine of the Seven of Cups, the visions of the Seven of Cups, whether one has partaken in a psychedelic drug or whether one is getting here purely through meditation or by some plant medicine or another. I learned a lot in journeying through this deck, and I did pair it with the oracles and spent time getting to know the intention of each of the oracles as well. I think this deck is one for a person who knows something about deep journeys into self. And working with this deck reminds me a little bit about spending weeks at the ashram, spending weeks in deep yogic studies where it basically breaks you down. You cry, you get sick, and then you come out the other side transformed. And that's what this deck feels like to me. Because of my familiarity with yogic studies, when Darshani published this deck, I backed it right away. This is the lovely Om Tarot. And in the guidebook, Darshani does a beautiful job of explaining the associations that she has placed in the cards. Again, this is a deck that I would turn to for personal readings. I would use this deck with a querent if it was somebody that I had shared yogic studies with, somebody that had been in one of my yoga teacher trainings, things like that, because the metaphors, the references may not be familiar to the general public. The stories, the mythology may not be familiar. It's a really beautiful, beautiful deck. And some of the cards do remind me of, like this one, I kind of get a wildwood feel to it, and I think about the journey of the eel, and I smile. The stories of Hanuman take me back to places, take me back to temples or personal experiences where I listened to stories or I was in a particular puja honoring Hanuman, things like that. Now, on a lighter note, I have some other themed decks. This is Dame Darcy's Mermaid Tarot. Very special place in my heart. Opened it on my birthday in Maui one summer, and it just reminds me of my birthday. It reminds me of the ocean, and it feels like a very light-hearted deck to me. It is Waite-Smith inspired, follows that system quite closely, misses a lot of the esoteric nature or the potential of that in this deck, and yet it just feels like a birthday present to me, which it was. And if I had a querent who loved mermaids and felt the same way about the sea, I may use this deck in readings for them. But this is one of my personal decks. And I suppose in the same way, it would have to be a pretty particular client for me to pull out the Hilda Tarot. This is another one of my personal decks. It just makes me happy to see Hilda frustrated, dancing, singing, playing across these tarot cards. I had coveted a Hilda deck for a long time by a different creator, couldn't get my hands on it. And so when Rhys Marin came out with this one, I was really happy to acquire it. It's playful. I think it inspires freedom, independence, joy. This one's called The World of Hilda Tarot by Rhys Marin, and I believe it is still available. Her knees. She's worked very hard, and her knees are scraped. This one's called The Wisdom of Pooh Tarot. This is a story that has a special place in my heart. And when I saw the Kickstarter and the quality of the artwork, I decided that, yes, this was a deck I was going to back. I know these stories very well, and I plan to continue sharing these stories with my grandchildren, and I hope that they never die. I hope they never lose their message. And I think the way that Rhys incorporated the messages of the tarot cards into the stories of Winnie the Pooh, for the most part, are very, very well done. Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. I have an annotated version, large book, and I think I picked this up when I was in university and I was taking a children's literature course. I've always been intrigued with these stories. I love the poetry, the language, the cleverness of the language. And at one time, I had the Bubba Studios deck as well. And I did a couple of videos on my channel exploring the differences between that deck and this one. This is Dame Darcy's Alice deck. And if you do have the Bubba Studios deck, the guidebook that goes with it is just great, because at the back of the book it goes through the stories sequentially and puts the cards sequentially together, which is what I did in my video with this deck, and I may have had the Bubba Studios deck at that time as well. Depending on how well you know these stories, it's a great deck to help people look at their own reflections. One of my favorite cards, and I think both the Bubba Studios deck and this one use the same one, is Alice as the Page of Swords. And she in that card, she is slaying the Jabberwocky. And so the kind of thing that I like to do is just sit and reflect on what that really means. And if you've studied the Jabberwocky poem, or you know the Jabberwocky poem, and you reflect on what it means to slay one's Jabberwocky, it's kind of clever. This is a very swordsy deck in that regard. Think it's a thinker kind of deck. And the only Bubba Studios deck that I have remaining in my library is the Bohemian Gothic Tarot. And I wanted to keep this one because it is Waite-Smith inspired, and it has that lovely Samhain fall kind of energy. And the quality of Bubba Studios decks is fabulous. And I mentioned the costuming when I was describing another tarot deck, and the level of detail and preparation that goes into the creation of these decks. You really can't compare. It's like a whole team gets together to prepare these decks. And so I keep an eye on their website to see what, if they're creating new decks or if some of their more popular ones are coming back. I may pick up one more. I do have a lot of their tarot bags, and I'd have a love of fabric and costumes and things like that. So this is the Bohemian Gothic Tarot by Bubba Studios. Surprisingly, I have very few animal decks left in my tarot library. These are the only 4. And at one time, there were quite a few more. In the center here is the Naked Heart Tarot. This is the 2nd edition of Gillian Wild's amazing deck. Always love this deck for its white space. I love the little touches, again, sacred geometry, symbols. It's a deck that I can pull out at any time and read with it. This is one of my favorite magician cards. And I know that some of the cards changed from edition to edition, and so that's why I point out this is an older edition. And at that time, it was only available through the creator. That's why it's in this video, not the mass market one. I love this Hermit card. I think there's a real ease to reading with this deck. And I could have put this one maybe in the Pip card group as well because of the simplicity of the nature of the minor arcana. One of the things I didn't say before was that even though in Waite Smith inspired Pip cards, there is a variety of ways that the wands, swords, cups, etc. are arranged. There's inspiration that comes through Pamela Coleman Smith's artwork in how they are depicted with an animal or not. And this one would be really kind of fun to do a side-by-side with the Lili White. There's some crossover of energy and the whiteness also in the background. Again, another deck I haven't had out for ages, but quite like this deck. This is the Wilder Woven Tarot by Greg White. It was gifted to me by Gerald of Tarot Stash. Thank you, Gerald. We had done readings together. He'd taken some of my courses, and it was a thank you gift. This is a Canadian artist, so I really appreciate that. And I know that Greg White was working also on a companion oracle deck. I don't know if it ever got published. I need to go back and look at that. So the wands are expressed through a flame. The swords sort of have a larger smoky window. I'll show you the majors. They're just beautiful. There's a water drop for the suit of cups and a triangle for the pentacles. The chariot is a snail within a snail, a moonlight journey. There's something kind of quiet and healing in this deck. And you get a sense that all is not quite revealed. You know those drawings where you see something really close up and you're not sure what it is? Well, sometimes I get that feeling here. And I love this. This is the Wheel of Fortune. We have the silhouette of the salmon, the bear eating the salmon, the journey of the salmon up the river to spawn. There's a lot of layers you can work with in each of these cards. In the Fool, we have a nest. We have a portal, an opening through the wing. These, one thing I haven't done with this deck is to do path working. I think these would be beautiful cards to path work with as you walked into the drawing and then allowed that location to expand. This could be quite powerful for that. I think I might leave that out and give it a try tonight. This is the Wilder Woven Tarot. Melissa Wotherspoon gifted me this deck early in her journey. This is a deck that I use for grief work. It's called the Rider Daschund Tarot. And these Daschunds can just melt your heart. That's the death card. I think there's an alternate death card, but this is the one that I chose to leave in here. All the cards are horizontal. That sort of fits the theme of a Daschund. And there is a story of each of the Daschunds in the guidebook that brings a personal touch to each of the cards. I think it's a really important deck for me in doing grief work with a client, and to remove humans and work with an animal. I find it's an easier way to go. Rider Daschund Tarot by Melissa Wotherspoon. So this one is sorted. I was going to go through it and do some studying. This is the New Zealand Naturally Tarot. It was gifted to me by Anna. She is the tarot student client who sent me the first edition of the Greenwood Tarot. And in my package, she included the New Zealand Naturally Tarot. And I think this is a lovely way to get to know another place in the world, to look at animals through the eyes of perhaps a different relationship. One thing I haven't done with this deck is to check out the moon phases, because I know when you're working with a Southern Hemisphere deck, or you're living in the Southern Hemisphere, the moon phases look a little different. And I totally forgot about that. So this is my only, that's not true, because I do have tarot decks that are created in Australia. Future project. Take out all Southern Hemisphere created tarot decks and have a look at the moon phases to see if they are true to the perspective of the moon phases from the Southern Hemisphere. This is New Zealand Naturally. These two decks are created by Julia Cuccia Watts, and on the left is the Ancestral Path Tarot. This is a deck that I used a lot for past life readings, ancestral work. There was a time, actually quite a few years, where I was getting requests for lots of past life readings, healing, ancestral work. And so I acquired a few different decks, oracles and tarots, to help with that process. And these are lovely, large cards. The suits are specific to a particular culture, as is the case in a couple of different tarot decks that I can think of. This is another deck where the artwork is kind of mesmerizing and pathworking is highly recommended. This is my favorite suit, Sacred Circles, the Suit of Pentacles. I just feel that it's kind of what you need when you're wandering into this sort of work. Beautiful Hermit card. There's lots of videos interviewing Julia on TarotTube, and so if you're not familiar with her or her decks, there are quite a few TarotTubers who have interviewed her and done extensive studies with her decks. The one on the right here is the new Sky Astrology, and there are, I believe, a couple of books that go with it. You can see on the bottom of the decks. So this is Mars squared, Seven of Cups. And there's quite a journey through this deck that you can take in working with the journal and the guidebooks. This is another deck that feels very much like a personal journey, one that you would wander through on your own, especially if you were studying astrology, trying to connect with or reconcile different perspectives on astrology, understanding who you are, why you are, what your astrology means to you. Real Sky Astrology by Julia Kuchia Watts. And I think Jonathan Daly, his channel, he's got a lot of interviews with Julia. That would be a good resource for learning more about these decks. And let's conclude with a couple of decks by James R. Eads. In the center and left is Light Visions, and on the right is Prisma Visions. These decks were created as a panorama. So in each of the suits and the major arcana, they come together to create a larger painting. And Prisma Visions is full color. This is the mini version, obviously, that comes in a tin. And the artwork is just beautiful. You can just see the energy, that kind of energy you can see when you slightly blur your vision. Two of Pentacles. I've mentioned a couple of times how I feel there's something to be had by looking at decks with less color. And in Light Visions, we're looking at the same deck as Prisma Visions, but just in burgundy kind of color and white. And I find that the creativity, again, I like that word spaciousness, that less color gives you is kind of special. I prefer, that's why I have the large version of this one. I don't have the large Prisma Visions. I prefer this actually to the full color. While the artwork in the full color deck is just beautiful, it is very specific, and it tells a very specific story. And so this is the one that I really like. I did have the green deck at one time, but there was something about the suit of swords that I found very off-putting, and so now I just have Light Visions large and small, and the Prisma Visions in color. And sometimes I will pull out the color deck just to sort of check on where the creator was, what the creator was intending for color, because sometimes color carries significant meaning. And what I imagine or what the creator was intending may be completely different. Here's a couple of cards side by side. Magician, not much color in the Magician. And the Sun, you really get a different impression with the full colored card. And in some of the cards, you can tell that the creator has embellished, zoomed in, just taken a part of the card that was originally designed in the Light Visions. And there's the Fool. And if I am wrong, let me know, but I'm pretty sure Light Visions came before Prisma Visions. Here's one more. 10 of Chalices. Well, if you've made it this far, I want to thank you for being here. This has been a wonderful exercise for me in organizing and thinking about my library, thinking about the purchase of future decks and so forth. I really look forward to your feedback and your questions. Have a lovely rest of your day. Namaste.